Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Laura Shuckburgh. Laura is the ultimate example of a fresh start and designing her own part 2. Having felt as though she was losing her mind and being deeply affected by anxiety all of a sudden, she decided to do some detective work and discovered perimenopause. What happened next was the start of a great big adventure. She left her marriage and decided to follow her heart. She's currently living in her camping car in southwestern France, travelling, falling in love, and coaching others through this life phase, the very embodiment of following your instinct, heart, and soul. Laura, it is so exciting to meet you, and I can't wait to hear all about your adventures. Would you like to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, thanks so much for having me, Hattie. It's very exciting. I grew up in the UK, in Worcestershire, in the countryside, loved horses, had ponies and all of that sort of stuff. Gosh, it's actually quite weird going back thinking about what you did when I was young. I've got a sister, and my dad is a builder and my mum's a hairdresser, so I come from a family who are just sort of very hardworking, working class people. And then, gosh, what happened? I went to normal schools, state schools for ages, and then they thought that I was getting a little bit sort of into bad company, and they sent me to a convent when I was 13, and that was pretty hideous. Yes, actually, with very evil nuns and people that didn't want you to thrive at all, and kind of anybody that had anything about them, any kind of personality, they just wanted to knock it out of them, you know. And that's horrible. I've had to really fight against that all my life, you know. I was, you know, somebody putting you down rather than somebody building you up. And when it starts at that age, it has an effect, I think. And then when I was about 8, I'd had enough of school. So I finished school when I was about 17. I didn't go to uni because I just was so over education at that point. I wanted to just get out. So then I just went and did some traveling. I went to Australia for a couple of years, met a guy there and applied for residency there and didn't get it. Then I came back, and around that time, when I was about 20, probably even earlier than that, I started modeling. And that was kind of my career for many years, actually, for about 20 years. So that took me all over the world in my 20s, which was great. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I didn't actually realise how good that was, you know, until in hindsight.
It's amazing what hindsight does for you and how much you can take for granted in your early 20s anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so as well. And so, yeah, I did that. And I was just sort of travelling in like a free spirit, which I've always been for all of my 20s, really. And I think probably I don't have any regrets, and I don't want to be somebody who has any regrets in life. But my one and only regret is not buying a property in London for 75,000 for a two-bedroom place in Streatham with an outdoor area when I had the money to buy it, you know. But then I suppose you have to think to yourself, well, I have to think to myself, actually, everything that we've done and everything that's happened to us is all part of who we are now. And
exactly,
it's a totally different story. And that's where having regrets it's a bit useless, really, isn't it, in many ways?
Yeah, it doesn't change anything or make anything any better, certainly.
So then I fell pregnant when I was 30. I was still modelling, and I fell pregnant, and I didn't really want to be pregnant, but I got pregnant. I was never somebody who was very maternal. And then I had a beautiful boy, and for 20 years I was looking after him, and a lot of that time on my own, because the guy who I was with at the time, my little boy's dad, he just became useless after about a year, and he just left. He had an affair and he left, and I was on my own, and he's never ever contributed anything financially. He sees my son, but he's never contributed. So I was a single mum for many years, and that was quite a tough thing for me, because modelling and doing that and not having a steady income and being the person looking after my child was those sometimes I remember being really sort of low in those years sometimes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's been my biggest kind of teacher, and he's a gorgeous boy and he's lovely, and I've done a good job.
Yes, I'm sure you have. I've seen photographs of the two of you together, and you both look very happy, and I guess that's really the key. As long as they're happy, then yes, you've definitely done a good job.
Exactly, yeah, he's a lovely boy.
So tell us how your experience of perimenopause has led you to be doing all the exciting things that you are now.
Well, I think my perimenopause journey is a big factor, and I think it's, I do think that perimenopause is a time that brings up a lot of change in a woman's life. And I think for me, I was in a marriage that wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't happy. I always had this kind of niggling feeling: is this it? And is there more out there? Something inside of me. And for many years, I kept pushing that feeling down. And I know, because I just thought, well, I should be happy. I've got a lovely house and I've got, a lovely husband, and I should be happy. So I tried very hard to make my marriage work. But in the end, the calling inside of me was just too much. And when I was married, for the whole of the time we were married, which wasn't actually that long, I was only together for about 8 years in total, we'd had this dream to go to France, to live in France. And now looking back, I think it was me who was pushing that dream, but my husband was very happy to come along. So we'd done lots of kind of visits backwards and forwards, because I've always wanted a life where there's more sunshine, blue sky, because it's very good for my mental health. And but I didn't really want to be in Spain. So we'd kind of looked backwards and forwards. And at the same time, when I was 46, around the same time, I remember finding out that I was in perimenopause, or having changes happening to me, and I didn't really know what was going on.
So how did you discover that you were in perimenopause?
It took me quite a while to discover what it was, but I started getting quite bad anxiety. I'd always had bad PMS, and I think I was undiagnosed PMDD for many years. So it seemed to be that I was getting that more and more. And at the same time, I was losing confidence hugely. I was getting kind of panic attacks at the thought of doing a presentation. And yet I was in a kind of very front-facing job, working with my husband's architecture practice. So I was doing presentations and networking, and just the idea of seeing anybody would fill me with dread. If I thought I'm going to meet anybody that I know and have to talk to them, and it was just so not like me. It was completely out of character. I'm a very confident person. I was also extremely tired, like really ridiculously tired, and then I did have night sweats. But at that time, my periods were still regular, even though they were light. They were still regular every 28 days. So I didn't put the two and two together, because at the time when I went into perimenopause, which was like 5 years ago, there was much less knowledge than there is now. There's much less out there talking about it. So I had no idea what was happening. And then I remember the kind of like the tipping point was once I was looking in the wardrobe in the morning, I got out of bed like dreading the day, looked in the wardrobe and just thought, I can't even choose what to wear. I can't even put that together in my head about what I'm going to wear. And I just got back into bed and just thought, there's something seriously wrong with me. And I remember lying in bed probably for a few days on and off, just started to research all these symptoms and realized, oh my God, I think this is perimenopause. And that was just so brilliant, because it was just like, yay, I haven't got Alzheimer's, or, I'm not going mad.
I felt exactly the same way. So to know that actually you're not, and it will pass, and it's hormonal, is actually quite a relief. What did you do then?
I did lots and lots of research, more and more research. And I started off taking supplements and kind of, knowing that I was in perimenopause, being a little bit kinder to myself. There was now a reason that I was in it. I also remember starting kind of my coaching journey around that time as well. So that's quite interesting, that kind of correlation. Nothing kind of worked. I was still very, very anxious. And I realized that actually, what about HRT? So I phoned up my GP surgery, and I was one of the lucky ones, because I know a lot of women don't have anybody who is very sympathetic when they go to their GP. But I spoke to 3 different female doctors in my surgery, because I wanted 3 different points of view. And all of them were in favour of HRT. And so I thought, well, I'm going to give it a go, because I come from, my grandmother's got breast cancer, had breast cancer and died from it. My auntie's had it. And I was worried about the link, those kind of old stories that were all in the press, which aren't true. And then I went on HRT, the patches I went on first. And I just think that really changed my life in many ways.
Are you still on the patches, or have you had to adjust?
I came off the patches actually when, I think it was because I didn't like that black sticky stuff that got on my bottom. I did a lot of in the gym. So I'm now on HRT. I'm on estrogel, and I've got a marine coil. Interestingly though, Hattie, I don't know about you, but this is the thing with information, isn't it? Even though I'm in this field and I do loads of research and I am kind of like I hate the word expert, but I know a lot about menopause and HRT and everything. Something on Instagram the other day about I thought having a Mirena coil with the progesterone localized is the safest way. And in many ways it is, but it is progestin. It's a fake progesterone. And I was somebody on Instagram the other day who said actually it's much better to take progesterone orally as long as it's body identical.
And it is so individual. What works for one person doesn't always work for the next one. You left your marriage in October 2020. So if we go back 5 years, I have to do this in my head so carefully because 2019 feels like about 8 years ago because of the pandemic. So 3 years prior to that, you found out that you were probably perimenopausal. Do you think there was a correlation between the two in any way? And what have you done since? Because I know everybody will be desperate to hear about post-marriage, what you have taken on.
Yeah, I do think there was a correlation between me leaving my marriage and my marriage maybe not working. But in as much as the fact that for me, as I said earlier, perimenopause is a time, I think, where you can no longer not listen to what your body is telling you in whatever way it is, physically, and for me, in a soul-based way as well. My soul was calling me to do something else. And eventually I couldn't not listen anymore. And that was the point that I just thought, even if we go to France, my husband and I, we are still not going to be happy. That's not going to make us happy. I was always kind of looking to the future, which creates a lot of anxiety. I wasn't living happily in the present moment, which I've done a lot of work on, and I help my clients with that. And so I remember coming back from a trip to France on a house hunting trip, sitting in the office after looking at thousands of houses I've looked at online. Oh my God, it was ridiculous in the end, over 5 years or so. And just thinking, I can't do this anymore. I just literally can't do this anymore. And I remember going upstairs to our apartment. We had an apartment above our office, a rooftop apartment. And I just said, look, I can't do this anymore, Dan. I want a divorce. And then that set some sort of wheels in motion of me thinking, well, what am I going to do? We didn't own a house together, so there was no sort of big asset. So I thought, they're going to have to rent somewhere in England. And I did start looking around, and I did have a little bit of savings. I even thought about buying a tiny property in Bridlington of all places, because the only place I could find somewhere to buy that I could afford. I thought maybe I'll do a bed and breakfast or something. And then something inside me said, why don't you just go to France, Laura? So then as soon as I'd made up my mind, because I'm a great one for sort of doing lots of sort of thinking, and then as soon as I've made up my mind, then I'll go set it into action. So I just put an advert on Facebook looking for somewhere to live, to rent in France, on some sort of site, on some sort of group. 3 or 4 people came back to me, and I just picked one in the south of France. And I thought, well, I think I'm going to go there for 3 months and see what happens. And also, it was just before Brexit, kind of the deadline if you wanted to move countries, It was Brexit. So I thought, it's now or never. I didn't even have a car. I had to buy a second-hand car. I found a car up the road that was just this nice little second-hand car. I left all of my stuff in the apartment, and I just packed a car full of stuff. And it was the 31st of October it was, because it was the night we'd just gone into full lockdown again. And I just thought, what am I doing? Are the borders going to be open? France was in full lockdown. Am I going to actually be able to get into the country? And I just thought, I'm just going to do it. So I just set off. I remember my son waved me off. I gave Dan a cuddle, got Pammy in the car. My bike was on the back of my car. It was chock-a-block full. And I just set off, very emotional and with driving anxiety, because I get driving anxiety from perimenopause. And more so in the stress of it all. I don't get it so much now, funnily enough.
So you set off to France. Did you have a plan?
I didn't have a plan other than just the immediate plan to just drive down to the south of France, near to Carcassonne, get there, because I'd never driven in France before either. I've never driven for that far on my own, never been on a ferry with a car, that I did. So it was all very kind of scary. I didn't have a plan further than that. I knew that I just needed to get there and see where it took me. So it was kind of just going with my gut instinct that this is the right thing to do now, even though it took a lot of courage for me to do it. I just set off, literally. That was it. In amongst all this, my husband and I had made an agreement, that I would take a certain amount of money, which was a very small amount of money. And that's why I live in a motorhome, because I can't afford to buy a house. So all of these kind of moves, and with my coaching business kind of just taking off, because I was working with my husband's, I was getting paid a wage. That stopped after 6 months, and I just had to just go and do it on a leap of faith, I suppose.
You are in your camping car, which makes me automatically think of Nomadland, amazing film. So you are, in my head, you are living Nomadland. Amazing community and all that kind of thing. Is there a community of you?
Yes, there are actually. You do see somebody. I mean, there's a guy who's next to me today and he had to move at the same time, Gerard, and he lives in, and quite a few people actually live in their motorhomes full time. And I'm talking posh, massive, big motorhomes. In France, there's so many motorhomes that, you know, that they are everywhere. And they're like, some of them are like 100 grand, these big homes. They're beautiful, you know. So it's not kind of living in a little funky camper van. These are people who've made lifelong decisions and just thought, no, I'm selling up and I'm doing it. He's got a trailer with a motorbike on. I've still got a car. You know, it's that kind of, but it's there is a definite community, yeah.
And you have your coaching business. How did that start? You said you started coaching or learning coaching when you discovered you were perimenopausal. So now you're building that as well and traveling at the same time. How does your life work at the moment? It just sounds wonderful to me.
Well, I've got freedom. And because of COVID, I suppose everything went online more and more so, because I was coaching people in person as well as online. And now it's been good for me because I can just coach online. I do all my business online now, really. So, yeah, I mean, I started coaching when I was working in the architecture practice because I realised that our team needed to be coached. And so we were looking for a coach, and just purely by chance, we met these people who did coach training. And she said, I think you'd be a really good coach, Laura. Why don't you come on coach training? As soon as I was there, I realised that I loved coaching. I loved everything about coaching, and I felt at home. But then I didn't like organisational coaching so much because of the kind of three-way contracting and the politics involved. But I did know that coaching was what I wanted to do, and I was good at it. So then I suppose it just organically grew that I didn't want anybody in perimenopause to feel like I did when I was there. And so that's how I sort of got into this niche of doing it. And so now I coach women online, but more and more the work that I do is working with organizations to get menopause awareness into organizations, especially in I've got a lot of contacts in the construction industry, which is very male dominated. And I'm also I've been approached, I'm writing an online course for a drama-based learning company who use drama to act out scenes so that it has more impact. So they're doing like menopause scenes, and
brilliant.
I'm writing content for it. I can do it from anywhere. But traveling around was what I wanted to do, and travel all over. But I've fallen in love with somebody who lives around here, a French man, and I'm kind of staying in this area more and more because he works in this area and he can't travel as much as me. And so we do travel, but this is why I'm kind of more in one place at the moment.
How exciting.
He's just the most amazing guy. I feel very privileged to be in love with somebody who's so amazing. And he's 12 years younger than me. Not that matters, but I think it's quite inspirational that a lot of women think that when they get to this kind of age, or can think that, you know, that this is it, you know, this is why you should just settle and do what you're doing because, you know, we're getting old or whatever, you know, they might think. And a lot of women do think like that because I hear it. But actually, I think we're only just beginning.
I agree. And the idea of second spring or part 2 or the third age is something that resonates really strongly. So we get the chance, certainly soon around this age, to curate and design our lives as we want them to be. Maybe just move ourselves up the list a tiny bit more and do things that we love. It's midlife, not end of life. So yours is the ultimate in fresh start and change, and part 2.
But yeah, chapter 2 of part 2. Like, and I do think also for me, timing was good because my son he's 21. He was just going to uni. He didn't need me as much, and I felt like, 20 years of being his mum, even though I'm still his mum, is a long time to be kind of present for another human being, isn't it? To be there all the time. It's a big It's a big deal. It's a big commitment.
Does he come out and visit you?
Yes, he does, and he loves it out here. And he's very, very supportive. He gets on very well with my man, and he wants to be an actor, so he's at drama college and doing his own thing.
The women who come to you for coaching, is there any one particular symptom that you see the most?
Symptom-wise, anxiety is always very high. Even in my Menopause Hive Facebook group, which I always ask them the questions, what's your worst symptom? Anxiety is always up there as one of the highest. And anxiety and loss of confidence. Mm-hmm. And I think they go quite, they marry up quite well together, and you usually have one and the other. And also, being at a crossroads, most women that I coach come to me when they are at this kind of crossroads, or like on a precipice almost, of what's next. Again, sort of how I was feeling, what's next? What's going on with me? Why don't I feel aligned, or why don't I feel in balance? And digging down and finding out why that is, looking at values, and are you living aligned with your values? Because if you're not, you will be out of kilter. And it's deep work that I do. And I think people have got to be ready. And I think that's the thing with coaching, is a lot of people like the idea of being coached, but when they come to you and they don't know anything about coaching is a wonderful, wonderful space. But the people who come to it have got to be willing to do the work to get to where they want to be, wherever that might be.
HRT has obviously helped you. Have you had to do anything else and almost coach yourself into the changes that you made?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I've done loads and loads of work on myself. I've always been like a self-development kind of junkie, I used to think of myself as, and I still am. I just love learning, and I find it a fascinating, the way that we work as humans, I find it fascinating. And my goal is to just become wiser and wiser and become the best person that I can possibly be to kind of help other people. And so, yeah, I've had to do lots and lots of work. One of a great book that I read when I was just at that place in France, when I got to France, was a book called The Surrender Experiment. I don't know whether you've ever read it, but it's all about knowing that actually where you are now is exactly where you're meant to be, and surrendering to the process rather than kind of always striving and trying to move things along, being in control of things. There's something about surrendering. And I've done a lot of work on that in the last year or so. And that also taps into kind of feminine qualities, whereas because I've always been like a bit of a striver, and I've always been somebody who's had to look after myself. My mum went and lived in Mallorca, and I don't have a good relationship with my dad's wife. And so I've always been very like a little unit all on my own from when I was about 20, really. But that's made me quite hard in many ways as well. It's given me, I've had lots of male qualities. And so I've been trying to lean into my female qualities of being and feeling and surrendering more. And I think that's made me much more content. And I've had a coach. I get coached a lot because I know the power of it. I do a lot of work at looking at every aspect of a woman's life, where they're kind of happy or not happy, where they're out of alignment, and then finding ways to kind of to shift that. And that can be through things like getting them to be more mindful, using meditation, because I meditate daily, looking at their exercise and movement, and looking at anything, looking at everything as a whole holistic approach to it, and giving women options and choice, helping them to know that they can do whatever they want as long as it works for them. Because I don't, like you said earlier, not one size fits all. We're all very unique in this journey.
Is there one foundational piece of advice that you would give to all women who have just discovered that they are probably in the realm of perimenopause?
Know that you have options, know that you're not alone, and do your own research, become your own advocate is what I would say. Track your symptoms as well. Always track your symptoms. And listen in to yourself. Give yourself some space to actually listen to what it is that you want as a person going forward in this next phase of your life. This kind of re-emerging. So excited.
So with your part 2, there are so many things that you've already said that are hopefully going to happen, or they're in the process of happening with the man you're in love with and buying a house together. But in a nutshell, if you were to design your perfect part 2, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a nice one, isn't it? My perfect part 2 would be to have a house that, because I've always wanted my own house. I've never actually owned a house yet in my life, and I'm 52. I want a house, I want some land, and I want to just do that and design a kitchen and make my home lovely, and to keep helping as many women as I can in this field, to grow my coaching and my menopause awareness stuff. That's it really. It's nothing too major. Grow some vegetables.
It sounds happy. Yeah, grow vegetables. Oh, gorgeous.
I kind of want to be a bit self-sufficient, I'm kind of quite a simple person really. And do some more traveling in my van, go and visit more parts of the world, or at least Europe. That's what I'd like to do, because I do love traveling.
Laura, where can everybody find you online?
You can find me on Twitter, marvelous_midlife. You can find me. No, that's That's on Instagram. On Twitter, I'm marvelous midlife, because it's spelt different. I've got a Facebook group, Menopause Hive, which you're welcome to join, and men are allowed to join that. And actually, I think for men, it's really interesting. I'm just about to post something on LinkedIn actually to do a demystifying the menopause for men, because I think it's really important. And I get not quite a few, but I get a few inquiries from men to be able to join the group. And yes, I think I love that more men want to know how to support women, and to just, I think one of the things I would say is that if there's any men out there, just to have empathy, just to listen, and maybe just to know that this is not anything to do with you. Don't take anything personally, when we're a bit cross or we're moody or going through stuff that we're going through, and it doesn't last forever.
It's lovely to meet you, Laura. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Hattie, and lots of love.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You can find Laura on her website, marvellousmidlife.co.uk, and on Instagram, marvellous_midlife. Follow us on the podcast apps, click subscribe and leave a review, as this is what will keep the podcast going. Please spread the word, as this is how we are going to make a difference for perimenopause and menopause just throughout life. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the newsletter on the website so you never miss an episode. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you next time.